Hey guys, Dr. Pierre here, your favorite board certified internist, best-selling author, founder of drpiersblog.com, and I wanted to do today a video blog. I've been doing a lot of blogging, and I usually my video blogs for my lunch and learns, but I've had a couple requests to hit some of the topics that I do, especially on this day, these Wednesdays, these medical spotlights, in a video format as well, and then soon later to be in an audio format. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to transition to do some video blogging. I'm still gonna be writing blogs, especially on Fridays. But today I wanted to touch on our topic of, why is it bad, to tell kids to kind of man up, and what happens, especially as an adult, that kind of trickles along and kind of emulates some of the problems that we have kind of associated with it. Now, I know for many of you, telling kids to man up is just something that you've done. It's just something because, when you were little, they did it to you, or you've seen it done, you've seen it heard. So you've heard the phrase. But what we've seen, especially, as kids get older, as they become teenagers, as they become adults, we've seen how much that's caused a detriment in a lot of things, especially from a relationship aspect and emotional aspect, that we want to kind of start bringing back. We want to start kind of curtailing in the beginning. And of course, because this is Men's Health Month, month of June, Men's Health Month, we have Father's Day coming up pretty soon. I definitely wanted to make sure that I hit this point home pretty early. As you know, I've been kind of hitting home points big on getting my guys to see the physician, getting my guys to talk to their physician, because it's one thing to see the physician, it's another thing to actually talk to them. So it's and a lot of these reasons why is because a lot of times men have these pent up frustrations, pent up emotions, and pent up ways of thinking that are so antiquated that it's causing problems. Like yesterday when I talked about in Lunch Learn, I talked about why men die younger than women. So check out the Lunch Learn yesterday if you're not familiar with that. I think it's drpiersblog.com. Good men die young. Good men die young. So to check that out, in a very, very interesting video. Just to and I hit about 5 points of why men die young, and then I have a PDF version for 5 more points of why men die young. So check that out for me. So today I'm going to be talking about why is it important not to tell your kids to kind of man up, right? And what does that mean, just like in the grand scheme of things, right? So when we first talking about telling kids to man, when we tell boys, because one thing, right? One, we don't tell the girls, right? And we'll actually talk about that. So we don't tell girls to man up, we tell boys to man up. So what does the insinuation of manning up even entail? The first and foremost thing is when, as a child, some type of conflict comes around, whatever it be. Or let's say not even a conflict, maybe if they just fall on the ground, they hurt themselves, right? We have a lot of our parents who their first phrase is man up, be a man, get strong, don't quote unquote cry, and don't quote unquote let your emotions. So that's number one, right? When we tell our kids to man up, what we're doing is not allowing them, right, to express their emotions. And when you don't allow kids to express their emotions, you don't allow them to really find that sense of self, right? They don't truly know who they are, because a lot of times they're having to regress and kind of keep it inside. So maybe they want to feel like maybe a tear is what they want to do. That maybe they want to cry, maybe they want to be happy, maybe they want to rejoice, but we're consistently kind of telling them these very antiquated themes of man up, be a man, don't do this, men don't do this, women do that, and that's kind of suppressing the emotional state of children. So one of the first things is we don't allow kids at an early age to really kind of come into their own, because we're already molding them into these specific gender roles that are unfortunately just out with the old, in with the new. Like, we're not even trying to adjust with the time, especially in this day and age where our women, especially, I have 2 daughters, right? So I don't want my daughter to be pigeonholed to think that my daughters to be pigeonholed to think that they can only cook or clean, or they're not allowed to provide, or not allowed to demand. that's not going to happen. Like, I can tell you that right now. So I don't want that specific gender role in my daughter. So I'm not going to, on my son, give him like these stern gender roles of what a man should be and how a man should act, right? So I want him to kind of be his own, right? So that's the first thing, right? A lack of self is a key concern when we're consistently telling kids, man up, man up, man up, from that standpoint. And number two, there's this disconnect, right, with their emotions. They don't really know how to react when they should react, right? Because in the situation, again, if a kid falls down and hurts their knee, they're supposed to cry. Like, it hurts. But for some reason, when we like chastise our kids, say, no, don't cry, don't do this, don't do that, then they're confused. Again, remember, we're talking about kids, right? They don't know what's going on. They just know that a natural reaction to them falling on the ground, for them scraping their knee, scraping their elbow, getting hurt, getting upset. We're automatically telling them, zip it up, get out of here, and like man up and keep it moving. So that's a disconnect, right? So number two is there's like this disconnect with our emotions that we're allowing to occur when we don't allow them to kind of express and kind of take that deep breath out and gas and say, okay, all right, this is what's going on from this standpoint here. And number three, when we talk about the lack of being able to be open emotionally, what occurs is that men, and again, this is especially when we see this, especially as an adult man, when we don't allow our boys to be emotionally open and emotionally able to kind of express themselves, what do boys tend to do who usually run into those issues? They tend to be more physically combative. They tend to be more, because that's the only way they know. Like, you didn't allow them the emotion of talking and expressing their way of their feelings of how to get through this resolution. So they only know how to fight. So they only know how to put their hands. They only know how to do things that gets them in trouble. So that's another thing too, right? So we're forcing boys to be pigeonholed into the sense that the only way they can resolve their concerns is to do some type of physical activity, and that's the wrong way, right? We have to be able to teach our kids in a slew of different reasons, but we have to slew of different ways. But we have to be able to teach our kids that emotionally you should be able to get through what you get through. And what happens as an adult, right? So you have that kid who's been told to man up for years, who does not know how to open themselves up emotionally, and now they have to, express themselves in a relationship. They have to express themselves at work, and we're not even talking about a casual relationship, with their spouse or future spouse or boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. We're talking about just we could be just at work, just at friendships. And when I talked about it yesterday on the Lunch and Learn, I talked about how men tend to have less social connections. Because they have less social connections, they have less people to kind of reach out to when they have problems. They have less people to kind of reach out to when they need some type of resolution to their issues. So that's the problem, right? Again, these are things that does not just stop once they become grown men, once they become teenagers, or the damage has almost kind of already been done. We've already kind of set that stage for failure for them. So that's another thing, right? So that's that's number three, right? Just the concern for conflict resolution only becomes physical, and that's not a concern, because then you have to deal with men who deal more with physical violence, domestic abuse, and all these things here that kind of trickle along to this criteria that manning up is the only way to kind of get through their factors there. And then we talked about the gender roles of men and women, and really now boys and girls, right? We're already putting them on these gender roles that they may not be able to fit, right? We're already putting them on these gender roles that they may not be able to be, let's quote unquote, the breadwinner. They may not be quote unquote the quote unquote man of the household. And for men, and I have a lot of men in my practice who deal with this issue a lot, where because of just life and everything that's happened, they're not in the position where they can command to be the quote unquote breadwinner, the man of the household, and all of these things weigh on them, all of these things on the mental aspect, and they get depressed and they get concerned and they have trouble even being in a relationship with their spouse, because that role that they've been told that they had to take, when they've had to man up and take as a child, is not there for them, and they can't fulfill it. And because of that lack of fulfillment, there's this there's this emptiness, that they're not complete. So that's what happens. So again, like I said, just because these are sayings that we tell our kids, they have drastic effects as men and adults in the adulthood. So when I talked about these here, and what I'll do is I'll actually I work on a PDF to kind of go over these points again, so you guys can download. When I talk about the issues of manning up, it's because I'm seeing so much of the physical and emotional manifestations of it when they become an adult. When they become an adult, they don't go to the doctor. Why? Because they were told to man up. So they were told not to seek help. They were told not to go to a professional when you have that problem. They were told to kind of internalize it for themselves, so again, see how we will go back to like why men don't go to the doctor. Like, there's a reason why, they didn't just like out the wazoo do stuff that they do, right? This is some of the fundamental reason why they don't participate in their health care like you would expect them. This is a fundamental reason why they don't live as long as women, right? Because they've been put in these social constructs at such an early age that it just kind of follows them along. It's the reason why they resort to alcohol abuse and drug abuse, and there is reason why domestic violence is always a concern, because they don't know how to open up emotionally to get their point across. And this is, I think, the biggest point that we have to make sure we address, that if we're going to, especially in the Men's Health Month, right? If we're going to talk about Men's Health Month, we got to talk about the boys as well. And we got to talk about making sure we're addressing the concerns for our boys, and making sure we're taking care of our boys, and letting them understand that you're allowed to be carefree, you're allowed to be quote unquote emotional, because emotional isn't a bad thing. Like, I'm not sure why we assume that being emotional is a bad thing, but it is not, of course. So we have to allow ourselves and our children to be so much more open, because again, when we're doing all of this for the boys, what are we telling the girls? So yeah, so we're not, and I'm not sure when Women's Health Month is, but of course I'm going to talk about it as well. If we're doing all of this focus on the boys and telling them to man up, we're reflexively telling the women up and do things the opposite. We're telling them to be more emotional. We're telling them to be more docile. We're telling them to be more submissive. And I can tell you right now, my daughters are not going to be any of those unless they want to. Again, it's their choice, but they're not going to be pigeonholed into having to woman up because you've told your boys for years that they have to man up. That's the problems, and that's the freight train that I want to avoid. So again, I think we do only half a service if we focus on the men and tell them to man up, but not focus on the women and not focus on the boys. Not focus on the boys and making sure that we're starting early. And I think the easiest way to start early is like to get that like terminology like out of there. We want women, we want men, we just want everyone to kind of grow up and kind of be in their own and be in their emotional sense of self. We want them to find themselves. Kids, that's when they learn. They learn how to find themselves at a very early age, and it just kind of carries on into adulthood. So if we stifle them then, we're going to see the problems now. If we stifle them then, they're not going to go to the doctor when they become an adult. They're not going to seek help when they need it. They're not going to know how to deal with relationships. They're not going to have many friends. They're not going to have all of these things that we know cause a detriment to their livelihood later on. So that's that today. That's today's vlog of the day. That is why we had to stop telling our little boys to man up, and what issues that we tend to see when they become an adult male, and that's why we're here. So again, thank you for watching the video. Again, I appreciate all the support. The video will be on YouTube as well as my Facebook page and pretty much everywhere later on today. You guys have a great and blessed day. Bye.